Hello, you lovely lot. Well, today's a bit different. This is not a product video about stuff we have in. It's an interview with Michael Fountain, who is the son of Guy R. Fountain, who founded Tannoy in 1926. He's a friend of the shop. He comes down quite a lot. We sell his book and a lot of the following information and loads more that we haven't spoke about is in the book, The Tannoy Story, which is available from us. Yeah, it's an interesting little conversation. It's the first time I've done this sort of thing, and I think the first time Michael's done this sort of thing. So, yeah, hopefully it'll be informative and be entertaining. So, here we go with that. So I'm here today with Michael Fountain, who is son of Guy R. Fountain, the founder of Tannoy. Was it 1926?
Yeah,
it was. I got that right then.
And I was born in 27.
Ah, right. So it makes you
94.
94.
Yeah.
Yeah. And annoyingly, you're more fitter than I am. So I creak around in the mornings and I struggle. And Michael gets up and does a load of
exercise.
What's your exercise routine in the morning?
I do squats and press-ups.
Do you?
But only from my knees.
Right.
Not from my toes.
I couldn't do it on my knees because they're too knackered.
Yeah.
Oh wow, amazing.
No.
So people will know, Guy's father. The GRF thing is on the signature thing on the GRF signatures, and so that GRF name, the Guy R. Fountain. What's the R stand for?
Rupert.
Rupert. I never knew that.
And he used to worry that at school he was ragged and called Loopy Roopy.
Amazing. Wow. So yeah, just tell us a little bit how how Tannoy was founded and what was it sort of what was it founded for? What was the idea behind the company?
Basically, my father, who came from Yorkshire, came down with a friend of his in the army to meet his parents, and that was a Walter Portwine, and they lived in West Norwood. And he met there. That's when he met my mother, Elsie Portwine. John Portwine was a pioneering businessman and set up a garage amongst other things and gave my father his first job as a motor engineer, because my father was motor minded, and he became a motor assessor for insurance. But basically, people at that time with the very early radios, which ran off the mains, required a 6-volt accumulator to power the 6 volts necessary for radio valves. And people were bringing in their batteries to have them charged up.
Yeah,
like
you have to take your battery in for your radio, have it charged up. Yeah.
And he decided that it might be an idea to make battery chargers for people to charge their own batteries at home.
Right.
And in order to do that, you had to reduce alternating current, your mains, from 220 volts down to 6 volts direct current. So he purchased a rectifier, which was what they call a wet rectifier, with a light sulfuric acid and 2 electrodes, which changed AC to DC. One electrode was made of the metal tantalum, and the other electrode was made of an alloy of a lead alloy. And for no particular reason, he decided he would create a trademark and put tantalum and alloy together and coined the word Tannoy.
Amazing.
Which he decided to then register as a trademark.
So Tannoy wasn't founded as a hi-fi or PA company. It was nothing to do with hi-fi when it first came out.
Well, it was brought by the fact that he was making battery chargers. But having made that, he then decided to put together microphones, amplifiers and loudspeakers to create amplified sound, particularly out of doors. Because there were no such events as that. And a friend of his, who was Bertram Mills, of Bertram Mills circus fame, used to have the annual circus at Olympia every year, but had never had an amplified microphone to address the crowd.
Was there anybody making that sort of kit at that time?
No, there wasn't.
Wow.
And he decided to experiment. In fact, he paid Bertram Mills £50 to let him put in a microphone system and loudspeakers over the bandstand.
So he paid for the first installation?
He paid,
That's brilliant.
Thereafter, I would say it was always the reverse.
Yeah.
But he was a natural salesman and pushing the name trademark Tannoy,
Yeah.
even to the extent that in the Mill Circus, during blackout scenes, and the orchestra was in the dark, above the orchestra stand was the name Tannoy in bright lights.
Illuminated.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Because he had this thing that you've got to push out the name whenever possible, because by nature he was a salesman.
It's a very forward marketing technique, isn't it?
He was not that brilliant technically, but he knew how to sell systems that were made by people who could.
Yeah.
So, in fact, that's how he got into public address systems.
Yeah.
But in fact, that was before the war, the mills. But during the war, there were government contracts for the likes of airfields to alert the crews in emergencies. And instead of ringing a bell, they would have a loudspeaker system giving them details of what the warning was.
They would say it over the tannoy.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
But the point was, we equipped over 700 airfields during the war.
Wow.
But the government contracts prohibited the manufacturer's name from being placed on the product.
Right.
Well, at that time, the manufacturer's name was Guy R. Fountain Limited.
Yeah.
Tannoy was a trademark. Just as with HMV, it had a trademark of a dog listening to a loudspeaker.
An old nipper, yeah.
So he argued reasonably that it did not preclude the trademark from appearing on a product.
Yeah.
And having won that battle with the ministry, he made sure that every piece of equipment that was supplied for the military, which would be tanks, airfield, submarines and everything, had Tannoy plastered over
So
it.
it made the trademark, the name.
The name.
Because it was stylised, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it became a household word. But
yeah,
he just put it on as big as he dared everywhere.
It's good. I mean, that is...
So he was a salesman,
yeah.
a remarkable man, a small man, and a control freak.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, he was my father.
Exactly, yeah. Right, yeah. So when did you join the company then?
I joined the company as soon as I came out of the army, which was about 3 weeks after the war ended on VE Day.
Okay.
I had been unwell in the last 3 months in the army. In fact, I was confined to the Middlesex Hospital in London, having suffered from a serious lung condition. But after 6 months recuperating, I joined the company, and I actually stayed with the company for 21 years, graduating up from a laboratory assistant to engineering on the road, servicing equipment, and manufacturing.
Yeah.
But 21 years, I finished up the last 3 or 4 years as managing director.
Wow.
But my father, who, as I say, was a bit of a control freak, he kept saying he was going to retire to his house, holiday house in Majorca.
Yeah.
And he would go out there. Within a few months, he had to come back and be in control again. So it became impossible to manage the companies without being constantly interfered with by my father.
So back, so when you started, it was pretty much still a PA, it's PA you were working on,
I was
wasn't
an engineer in the laboratory.
Yeah.
I helped the great Ronnie Rackham design the dual concentric.
Amazing, yes.
In his early days.
Yeah, yeah.
He was an incredible designer, very gifted. But, you know...
You were putting stuff into the House of Parliament as well, weren't you?
Well, the House of Parliament came in a little later because the House of Commons was bombed during the war and rendered useless, so Parliament started to use the House of Lords. And they wanted a system that we called sound reinforcement.
Yeah.
That is to say, to lift the amplification to a degree, but not blast it out.
Yeah.
And we designed, or Rackham designed, a system which we put into a small section of the House of Lords for suspending microphones and placing speakers on the backs of the benches.
Yeah.
But rather than let them into the benches, we had long tubes hanging down the back of the benches with the little speakers at the bottom.
Wow.
So we proved to the ministry that the system would work.
Yeah.
They therefore designed a system to build it into the furniture, the designer being basically Giles Gilbert Scott.
Right.
Who by chance happens to be my wife's great uncle, or
Wow.
was. But anyway, so as the House of Commons, present House of Commons was rebuilt, it incorporated a Tannoy system with suspended microphones, but it was necessary for an operator to control which microphones were on or off.
Yeah.
So that if one person was talking, it didn't then amplify someone else the other end of the chamber at the same time.
So this is all Rackham's work, was it?
This was Rackham's design.
Yeah.
But the point was, if you weren't careful, suspending a microphone near to speakers, you got what they called acoustic feedback, where it would start to whistle.
Yeah.
So you had to make sure that if any microphone was switched on, the local loudspeakers, the members of which could hear the person direct, were muted.
Yeah.
And because of that, you had to have an operator. It couldn't be voice operated, otherwise a member of parliament could get up and cough and switch his microphone on, which wasn't going to work. But the system was designed and put in with the building of Giles Gilbert Scott on the new House of Commons, which was rebuilt.
Yeah. I think most people think Rackham. It's quite a famous fact that Rackham designed the dual concentric. It's interesting that he was actually doing a lot of other stuff as well, but only really known for the dual concentric.
He was a natural genius.
Yeah, yeah. Did he get on well with your father?
As well as anybody did.
Really? Was he a bit of a difficult character?
No, who, Rackham?
No, your father.
No, my father. Yes, he was a difficult man because he was a control freak. In fact, Ronnie Rackham should really have appeared in the honours list. But my father's attitude was, well, if anybody's going to, he is going to. So he put a stop to it.
So that was actually happening, was it then?
Yeah, Rackham should have had a
really
in the honours list. Yes.
And that was going to happen, but your dad stopped it.
Well, it was being proposed.
Wow.
My father got wind of it, and his reaction was, well, if anybody's going to get an honour, it's for me. So
that's harsh, isn't it?
I know.
Without Rackham, the company wouldn't have. I mean, Rackham's dual concentric idea was that point between from the PA side of things suddenly going into hi-fi. I think because that dual concentric was such a good sounding drive unit, they've used it in applications of home hi-fi and studio monitoring.
Yeah. Well, to begin with, the design of the dual concentric was to make as near perfect a sound reproducer for testing purposes as was possible. And when that had been created, it was then applied to home use. Yeah. Because you then got recordings, which were the FFRR. Higher quality, and justified having your dual concentric to reproduce it.
Yeah. So you would take the stuff that people were listening to in the studios to get that sound. Going, well, if I wanted to sound like a monitor, I'll get the monitors and put them in my house.
Yes.
It's a bit like the LS358, the Rogers LS358. It was designed for the broadcast fans. Because it was so good, people thought, well, I could use that in my small room at home. Yes. And it became a hit in the domestic market as well, as the dual concentrics did.
They also put into theatres dual concentrics to give better quality sound. But you always had the problem where you had microphones and speakers in any way close to each other, acoustic feedback. There was a system designed with the House of Commons system called a standing wave eliminator, which meant if a frequency started to whistle, you would take that frequency and alter it by 3 or 4 cycles, which was not detectable to the ear, so that particular frequency stopped whistling until it moved on to the next one. And by that continuing, you were able to get much more sound amplification before acoustic feedback occurred. Right. And that was another one of Ronnie Rackham's. Together with Dennis Terrett, who was a great assistant to him, and who is still around now. Well, I still keep in touch with him.
I've met Dennis Terrett's family because we bought some Tannoys off the family. And I think it was Dennis's family that gave us the recordings from House of Parliament, the actual 78 acetates.
That was Robot.
Was that Robot? I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
I don't think you know Dennis Terrett.
Right, I've definitely spoken to the family though. I think that's
But Terrett actually at this very minute is on a cruise. But that's
is he? He's still around. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
He's 88.
Is he?
So he's
a young man.
He's a youngster.
Now that you were talking about the applications of the dual concentric, I know for a fact that, well, I say fact, if I'm wrong, Michael will correct me, but I think in 1947-ish, they used the Tannoy Black, which is basically the first commercial version of the dual concentric in the Decca decoder radiograms.
The Decca decoder, in fact, employed a 12-inch dual concentric.
It was a black, I think it was 12.
And it was 3 units. One was a dual concentric, and 2 were more conventional drivers.
Yeah, they sold 500 of those, and 2 of them went to the Palace, didn't they?
Oh,
The Queen's
could be.
got one.
That I don't know, but
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true. Yeah.
Decca were only just up the road in Brixton, and we had a very good relationship.
Oh,
With them.
oh, okay. There was a good working relationship between them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm yet to find a Dakota with the black in it, but I mean, blacks. You know, blacks are £15,000 each now.
Are they?
They are
Yeah.
crazy. I've seen a black in a private collection, but I've never actually owned a black.
Yeah.
Obviously, the ones that the Hi-Fi guys will be watching this will know the black came first, the silver, and then the red, and then the gold. The gold's the most famous one, but I'd say the nicest to my ears, are the silvers.
Yeah.
I think they sound great.
Yeah.
You know, and in the early big corner cabinets, and the silver was a cracker, I think.
Well, fortunately, at the time I was in the laboratory with Rackham, my hearing was extremely good. Naturally, being up in my 90s now, it's not what it was.
So, were you voicing some of the designs for Rackham then? Were you listening to his designs and going, yeah, that's great?
No.
Oh, you weren't?
No.
It was totally Rackham's ears.
It was total.
Okay.
And also measurement. It was a crystal microphone which would measure the effectiveness of the speaker up the whole scale at the crossover point.
Yeah.
But the crystal mic was the most accurate one you could use at that time.
Did Tannoy have an anechoic chamber, did they?
No. We had what we called the pink room.
Okay.
The walls of which were perforated wooden tiles.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't a proper anechoic at all. It just stopped the worst of the echoes.
Right, yeah. Which is real world, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Because when anechoic chambers are all great and everything, you can get a flat response, but when you put it into your lounge and use your ears, you know, organic things as opposed to microphones, often designs that are perfect on paper sound pretty bland.
Yeah.
So it's nice is that, you know, we will test them, not in an anechoic situation, but in a almost real world situation. I suppose you're emulating by using those tiles with the holes in, which are now, people use that wooden slotted design.
Yes.
You're sort of almost emulating a nice damped lounge, you know, thick carpets, bookcases, all that stuff, which is the real world. You know, this is like a room like we're in now. We used to demonstrate it here, so the carpets are thick, we have the curtains, you know, there's loft insulation behind the painting, everything's all dampened down. And it's interesting they didn't go completely anechoic with the design of that, of your range of speakers.
Yes, in actual fact, to stand in an anechoic chamber and talk to somebody is a most weird experience.
You hear your heart beating. I've never been in one, but people have told me.
I have, and it's a weird experience.
I don't know where there is one. Where can I go? Has a science museum got one? I don't know.
Look up Google.
We'll Google it later. Absolutely.
But no, I have done, and it's a weird experience.
Yeah. Wow. Right, where do we get to? So we got the Ronnie Rackham thing.
And Dennis Terry.
And Dennis Terry, absolutely, yeah. So you had some family connections, the Tannoy family connection. You told me once about AC cars. You meant there was a connection between your family and AC.
That was my grandfather, John Portwine,
yeah.
in Norwood. Because in West Norwood, my grandfather, having gone into the motor trade, and also as a family, they had a string of butcher's shops where they were the first to import chilled meat from the Argentine.
Right.
And they wanted a carrier, a motorised carrier, to collect meat from Smithfield Market and take it to the various shops in the south of London. And in West Norwood, in what's now called Waylick Place, used to be called Thomas Place, were three engineering brothers called Weller.
Yeah.
And John Weller and my grandfather, John Portwine, together they put together a three-wheeler with a basket on the front, which was petrol motor driven, and they called it an auto carrier. Yeah. From which ultimately AC was derived.
Wow. They were used as Tannoy promotional vehicles, weren't they?
No.
Didn't I see that?
No. What you saw in the book, other things, was simply a three-wheeler van, which almost comprised a motorcycle inside.
That wasn't the AC
van
thing.
on the back.
That wasn't the AC.
There was no AC connection at all.
Okay, right.
AC made these auto carriers for delivery around shops, and then they made a four-seater saloon, and then they were the first wholly British motor manufacturer in the UK.
Amazing.
because the likes of Ford were not in fact British.
No,
They originated in America.
Yeah.
But no, AC, that was on my mother's side, John
Yeah.
Portwine.
Yeah.
An unusual surname, but...
I like Portwine as a surname, that's cool, that is.
Well, it's a Huguenot name.
Yeah, oh, right, yeah. So, I mean, when you worked for Tannoy, when did you leave Tannoy? What were the reasons for that?
Well, I left Tannoy, well, let's see, I joined 1946, so it'd be 67, 21 years, by which time I'd been managing director. My father had been promising to retire, but he couldn't. And
were you going to take over if it all went like that? Your dad retired?
I was managing director.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it ran well, and very busily, but my father...
What year was that, sorry, Michael?
I said that was 1947.
When you were managing director?
When I was... No, not 47, 67.
67.
I joined in 47
Yeah.
when I came out of the army, and but 67, which was after 21 years,
Yeah.
and I was managing director for the last 2 or 3. My father was an impossible man to work for.
Right.
And we had serious difficulties. Alcohol didn't help on his side, which was unfortunate. But eventually it became impossible. And I said, I can't work with you anymore. And he said, oh, you must. I will pay for you and your wife to go round on a 6 months world cruise.
Nice.
I said, I'm sorry, it doesn't solve the problem.
Sounds a bit bribery, that, doesn't
And
it?
so with great difficulty,
Yeah.
I left the company, and eventually by a long, interesting series of opportunities, I managed to pick up the exclusive distribution of Givenchy perfume.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that's another story.
Yeah. Just before we
success.
go on to before we go into that,
Yeah.
I just remembered as well. I should have wrote it down in my points, but I haven't. Wasn't there? There's a military thing, isn't there? There's a military connection. Did you do the submarines as well? Wasn't there?
Oh, there was Tannoy submarines, yes.
Yeah. Was that
And
a
lot of
separate
this
division, wasn't it?
was valveless.
Right.
You had a power microphone,
Yeah.
which was completely valveless.
Yeah.
And they did a similar system in submarines for they didn't require any, they weren't, no, not powerless, they were valveless.
Valveless, yeah.
Yeah, they were powered, and they were a series of 8 internal units of carbon cells.
Yeah.
But no valve amplification was necessary.
Wow.
So they were able to use them on Royal Artillery gun control equipment.
Yeah.
Because no matter what the power of the explosions of the guns,
it
couldn't disturb the valveless amplifier.
Oh, interesting.
In fact, on 25-pounder control, you had a control system where the gun controller, or the central controller, could talk through a power microphone to the little, amplifiers, loudspeakers, by the guns, and the loudspeakers you could then shout back into those and go back to the controller, again all valveless.
Wow.
And we used to do tests on those down in, I don't know where it was, in the West Country somewhere.
So was Tannoy compartmental? I can never say that word. Was it in different sections? So you had a military... So you can't say it either, can you? Compartmental, whatever it is. You know what the word is, even if you can't say it.
That's
right. But there was different departments in Tannoy. Was there a military department?
No, it was all one.
Was it all one? Oh, because I spoke to someone who said they were in the submarine section of it.
No, there was no submarine section.
There wasn't a section for the military side?
No, none at all.
Oh, okay, that's interesting, yeah.
And we simply manufactured... there was always a dream of my father to rebuild a complete factory assembly in Norwood.
Yeah.
But it simply, we kept on taking it on or building additional bits of units, like a rabbit warren.
Yeah.
But that was the way he worked, and that was it.
Yeah, so 67 when you left then, was the company mainly PA or was it mainly hi-fi at that point?
It was both.
Bit of both.
In fact, it was still early days of hi-fi.
Yeah.
Rackham was still designing unique enclosures.
With that time,
PA was still the principal.
But 67, function. I mean, the dual concentric has been going 20 years.
That's so.
Yeah, yeah.
But then PA, in a big way, was all the, for example, the Greyhound Racing Association stadiums, where an outdoor equipment like that was big business.
But it was.
And factories, music while you work, and outdoor amplification in
Yeah.
arenas.
It's limitless almost, isn't it?
It was enormous.
And you had the studio monitor thing sewn up as well, didn't you? A lot of
They were recognised as being the tops.
They were, yeah.
A couple of American comparable units.
JBL was probably at that time.
Lansing was good.
Yeah, Lansing.
But no, Tannoy was reckoned to be good. But with the GRA, Greyhound Racing Association tracks, Greyhound Racing very popular, but usually within those tracks they also had dirt track racing.
Right, yes. Speedway sort of thing.
Speedway,
yeah.
or dirt track.
Mm.
And they were going great guns. In fact, at New Cross, for about three years, I took advantage of the connection. I was a speedway announcer every Wednesday night.
You were?
I was.
Amazing.
Yeah. And, on Wednesday nights during the season, I was the speedway announcer.
That's
and
brilliant.
used to do record request programs for the crowds to dedicate to their favourite rider.
Wow.
But that's another side of my life.
So you were doing all that over the Tannoy?
Yeah.
That must have felt good.
Yeah, it did.
So yeah, you touched on your other companies like the perfume company.
What, Givenchy?
Yeah, I can't say it, so I'll let you say that.
Otherwise pronounced Givenchy.
That's
The
the
point was, the Givenchy brothers, both now have passed on. The Hubert de Givenchy was a couturier, but they decided, like many other perfume companies, to introduce other design companies to introduce a perfume, and so they introduced this perfume, but wanted a UK distributor. And due to a mutual friend who knew they were looking for one, we set up a company in the UK, in the back streets of Twickenham,
Right.
to start Givenchy. And over 18 years, we never looked back. It was a tremendous success. It was a unique range of perfumes, and eventually was sold out to the Louis Vuitton group.
Right.
So they sold out, and so did I.
Yeah.
And having also started up a degree of packaging design, we had my packaging company, which also designed for the likes of Burberry's.
Right.
But that was never a great thing, and I slowly retired.
Yeah. So after '67, really, you weren't in the audio trade at all. You've gone on to your own projects.
No, I came out of the audio side at that stage.
You're always keeping an eye on Tannoy, I guess, though, weren't you?
Well, yes, kept in touch.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Wow.
started to travel the world.
Yeah. Did you?
Well, yes. I mean, when you get into retirement, if you can afford it,
Yeah.
you start travelling.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, So the legacy of Tannoy was going to. I mean, it's never going to go away, is it? I know the company has been sold off now. We won't go into that, but it's in everyone's hearts. It's in the dictionary. You know, the word Tannoy is in the dictionary. It's one of the only few company names. Hoover, I think. Yeah.
But must give this to my father.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to have put a name into the dictionary. But the other point is, Tannoy is much better known in the UK due to the factories and services during the war than it is abroad. It's only now known abroad on the hi-fi side. Yeah. But we never put public address systems outside the UK.
Do you know who was doing the PA stuff in America then? What companies was that?
No idea.
Is that Lansing or Bozak or people like that?
There would be any number of.
Yeah.
I mean, Pi used to do it.
Yeah, I suppose
HFV used to do it.
Yeah. Neither of them are in the dictionary, though, are they?
And the railway stations.
Yeah.
Tannoy were the only one that insisted on plastering the name over every piece of equipment they made.
It was a great idea, though, wasn't it? It was a brilliant idea,
and my father, he was a natural salesman.
Yeah, and it got the dictionary entry, which is good. And any comedy fans watching this will have known the Alan Partridge, the Steve Coogan Alan Partridge reference to Tannoy being annoyed him that people were talking over the Tannoy and then not knowing that it was a trade name. So it was even Steve Coogan picked up on that one in one of his sketches. But we could probably go on. We might even do a part 2 one day. But
that's fine.
Yeah. Thanks so much for chatting to me.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and I hope. I mean, this is the first time. There's a couple of bits of me sort of panicking a little bit, but hopefully that came across. It was entertaining for you guys. Thanks again, Michael, for doing that.
It's my pleasure.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Cheers.